Have you ever watched a large tech project collapse without anyone seeing it coming? Let's talk about the hidden mistakes that cost companies millions and how you can avoid them. I'm Matt. I'm your fractional CTO. I've been in this business for 25 years, which is a quarter of a century, and that's a long time. I love technology. I love solving problems. I love solving business problems using technology. And let's dive into some issues that a lot of projects have and how we can avoid those mistakes. So there's some basic mistakes that are very costly. And the first one is complexity. It's very difficult to know how complex something is until you get into it. We do have some historical data. I've been around for a while, so I can see some things. I'm like, yep, that's going to be a little bit complicated. But there are some times when I think, or other people on the team will think, it's really not that complicated. We dig into it and we find out it is very complicated. A lot of times people like to use construction analogies and correlate them to software projects or technology projects. That's a huge mistake. Why is that a huge mistake? Well, because a house is never going to cost 10 times your estimate, but software could, or a tech project could. Tech is very time intensive. AI is starting to help that out and try to reduce the time that we have to spend on tech, but it's still an expensive endeavor. And sometimes it's not even software development. It might just be integration or implementing a new ERP or something like that. The migration and everything else could take a long time. And so that's where the spend is. A lot of time, a lot of expert knowledge. These people are well-trained and highly experienced. So that's where the cost comes in with complexity. Another one is your requirements. It depends on the project. A lot of times the project will be big enough where you'll just want to do a Scrum or Kanban or something like that, where you want to have little steps along the way. So we'll do step 1, and then once we find out what we've done in step 1, then we'll go on to step 2. They're linear. They're not related. We have a high level of what we want to do in our head, but we won't lay out the whole project and say these are the requirements, because we don't know the requirements yet. We know that this much needs to be done, so let's do this, and towards the main goal of completing the project. But that completion can change over time. We might have to pivot. So there's a balance between not enough requirements up front and too much requirements gathering up front. When I first started, everyone was using what's called waterfall. They would go out, spend 3 months, develop the requirements, then they go and give the requirements to the software team, and the software team would go out and build the product, and then they deliver it to the customer, the end users. And then the end users would say, well, this is not anything like we wanted. So that's why we've developed things like Scrum and Kanban, where we can take an incremental bite-sized step along the way, show progress, and make it incremental. That way, our feedback loop is a lot shorter. Instead of being 6 months or a year, now our feedback loop is 2 weeks. Another thing is scope creep. A lot of times scope creep is necessary, but sometimes, or actually most times, scope creep is not necessary. You've probably heard the term MVP, minimum viable product. This is a great way to get something out the door. And the philosophy of that is, what's the bare minimum I can have deployed and in production for it to be valuable to the end users? That alone will reduce scope creep, because instead of saying, oh yeah, I want the app to do X, Y, and Z, you're just going to say, I want the app to do X. And that's it. That's all it does. Then you'll go in, you'll take a look at what it does, you'll get feedback from the users and see what needs to come next. Okay, and I spoke about Agile and Scrum and Kanban. This is all a way to help manage projects. The main goal of all those are to get the business more involved, get more feedback back to the business from the development team in a quicker cycle. Like I mentioned, instead of it being 6 months to a year, now we're at 2 weeks. One problem that can happen in any Agile project, whether it's software development or system integration or implementing whatever technology, it could even be a non-technical project, but you need to have the right people in the right room at the right time. This is where sprint planning and refinement and the discovery of what we're going to be building. We need to have the key stakeholders in place. If we don't, we'll make a lot of assumptions, and knowing people, myself included, my assumptions are almost always wrong. So we need to get the business in the process so that they can help drive the project. A lot of times people don't like all the meetings with Agile, but the The key benefit for having, say, a retrospective or a demo for a sprint is to see what the team has done, where we are, and if we're in alignment with the business. Okay, here are a couple examples of projects that kind of went off the rails. I know 25 years, I've seen a lot of great projects. I've seen a lot of projects that struggled and everything in between. So we'll start with the worst one. The worst one was we were working with a client. We had a tight deadline and we were working really hard to get everything done within the deadline. We were about a third of the way through the project and the client was not happy with the progress. We were on schedule, maybe a touch behind, but the client was just not happy. The client didn't like the progress. I know we did skip a couple of sprint review meetings because we didn't have anything to show them. It was all like back end stuff, and that was towards the beginning of the project. And that just set the tone for having a bad relationship with that client. So what I've learned from that is don't skip any meetings and try to help the client see what we see. And by doing that, we can be a little bit more effective. Along the lines of that project still, we thought we were doing a great job. We were working hard, we were getting a lot done, but the visibility wasn't what the client expected. And that's the thing, is expectations. They had this set of expectations, and we thought they should have these set of expectations. So it wasn't even that they were inflated, it's just they were different. They had never done a software project before. They didn't know what they didn't know, and they were ignorant, meaning they didn't know about software projects, just like I'm ignorant in the industry that they were working in. They didn't know what to expect, and I didn't do a good enough job of explaining that to them. Projects after that, I do a much better job of explaining, here's what's going to happen. Here's what you should expect. Here's what success looks like for you. And here's what failure looks like. So we can have a better gauge on how the project is doing. Okay, here's the second one. Also started with one of my clients. It was scope creep, a lot of scope creep. The initial requirements, I took a look at them and they wanted it done in 3 to 4 months. I said, there's no way. That's not going to happen. And the reason for that is I knew their systems. I knew what they wanted. They wanted a lot of system integration, and they wanted a lot of custom software written around those systems that we're going to integrate with. Going into it, knowing 3 to 4 months is not feasible at all. I voiced that very, very clearly, and they were okay with that at first. So they thought, okay, maybe 6 months. A year and a half later, we finally delivered the product. Now, this was also a success story because the features they wanted to add, the scope creep, actually worked out to be very beneficial. This was in the insurance industry. It was their claims entry system. It took 15 to 20 minutes for the claims agent to submit a claim while they were on the phone with the client. It was not available for the customers to enter a claim via the website. They could only call in. So the scope creep was, we needed to make the system fast, and it integrated with 3 of their other systems. And it generated some documents, and then it emailed them out, and it started off some workflows and this and the other. Did a lot of things, and they wanted to have all that to go live. They didn't want to go live with part of it, but they knew what they were doing. They knew it would take a long time, and they knew they would be over budget. But it was a conscious decision instead of it being an oops, we didn't realize. So it was a great example of scope creep that ended up benefiting the end users and their end customers. Okay, how do we prevent those mistakes? Scope creep is easy. You don't do it. You iterate and you deliver more frequently. Then you can work on the features that you want. You build up your backlog, you determine what you want in your product, and then you do it incrementally every 2 weeks. You don't need to release software to the public, to your end users every 2 weeks, but you do need to have a set of work that you will complete in 2 weeks. Second bit is to insist on stakeholder engagement. The business has to be involved in all projects, all technology projects. We have to have a stakeholder, a business owner that will make sure that we are doing the right thing for the business. And then the third thing is deliverables, like I mentioned before, incremental improvement instead of one big swath of work. It's like saving money, losing weight. They're both simple and they're both difficult. Why? Because we have to eat every day. And if we eat too much and exercise too little, our weight goes up. So if we want to maintain our budget in our projects, we need to make sure we're not eating too much. We're not increasing the scope. We have clear milestones, we have clear deadlines, and we have frequent checks along the way. Okay, some red flags to watch out for. The first one, it'll work out. It'll work itself out is not always a good idea. Sometimes that's true. Most of the time it is not. What we monitor, we improve. So if you have a project that's going on and you monitor it, that doesn't mean more meetings. That means closer attention to what's happening, closer attention to the stories, your velocity, what's going on in your project. Are you meeting your milestones? That type of thing. That is really important. Red flag number 2 is missing stakeholder input. That is key. That is the person or group of people driving the project. They need to be involved. The project is only there because the business needs it, not because someone wants to do it. And then the third one is poor visibilities to blockers and risk. With any project, you go in and you think, oh, this should take us 3 months, right? And it doesn't, because you didn't know what you didn't know. As soon as you start digging into it, you feel this is not going to be done in 3 months or 6 months. It's going to take a lot longer. At that point, that's when you raise the flag to the team and say, this is what I found. How do we want to proceed? You don't sweep it under the rug. You raise it. You raise the issue and as a potential blocker, and you say, how do we want to proceed with this project? Okay, so in summary, projects are difficult. Whether it's a software project, a landscaping project, any construction project, any project is difficult. Embrace the difficulty. When you embrace the difficulty, then you focus on what's difficult, you measure what's difficult will improve, and then it will become easier for you. It won't actually become easier, you'll be able to better deal with it. So it requires discipline to keep things going, great communication with your team and the business, and you can avoid these costly mistakes. If you run into any issues, have any questions, want to chat, there's a link in the description to book some time with me. I'd love to help you out. And as always, like the video, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.